Howdy, Ags. Welcome to Aggie Growth Hacks, the podcast sponsored by the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M, where we help entrepreneurs improve their business, connect with other Aggie entrepreneurs, and support one another. I'm your host, Greg Martin, Fighting Texas Aggie class of 2001.
I'm your co-host, Chris Hunter, Fighting Texas Aggie class of 1998.
Whoop. Well, we got a little story for you, Ags. Robert Martinez, founder and CEO of Rockstar Capital, a world-class multifamily investment and management company, shares his story from a young man in McAllen, Texas, to the owner of a company with almost $1 billion in assets and plans for much more.
So pass it back and listen up to Robert as he shares some good bull.
Well, welcome back, Ags. We've got a very special episode of Aggie Growth Hacks for you today. Robert Martinez is the founder and CEO of Rockstar Capital. Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for letting us learn from your wisdom and your story of growing a company from nothing into the amazing company it is today. Just can't wait to dive in and super excited.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be on this.
Well, Robert, Chris and I are lucky enough to stay and be in Aggie land, but you're not too far away. But once upon a time, we were all students here, but we move away and we experience the real world, but we all miss being a student at A&M. What do you miss most now that you are not a student on campus?
Well, I'll tell you what I don't miss. I don't miss ramen. I don't miss being poor. I don't miss not, living on a tight budget all the time and trying to make ends meet. But, those are the best lessons of life, right? That's what teaches you the adversity.
To be hungry?
I miss game day. I think that was epic. I remember, staying up the night before and kind of reading the stats and kind of saying who we were going to play against and figuring out why the point spread was what it was. I remember getting up early and just having a great time with everybody. We started drinking beer and we started playing games and playing John Madden on the PS, and then just kind of drinking John Madden, right? So we would drink whenever it was a first down, or you'd have to down it when you scored a touchdown, and those were good times, right? I mean,
I don't think I could incorporate that with my son. Like my 15-year-old, no. He beats me really bad, but wow.
Yeah, we had a good time. I mean, it's just we didn't have a lot to do, right? So we're playing video games and then going to Aggie games on Saturdays, or if it was great, a Saturday night game, because then you really were ready to go. If you're playing all day, the 11 o'clock games, you really didn't have a chance to get prepped. But the 6 o'clock games, wow, that was something.
Love it.
I'm like underneath the lights.
Love it. And what's interesting is that all of these Aggie entrepreneurs, I would say probably 80% of them, their either favorite memories or what they miss most about it is revolving around football. We're not a football school at all, right?
No. And then the enrollment's so big now. My goodness, it was like 40 to 50,000. I don't think it topped out at 44, 45 when I was there. And what is it now? Like 70, 80?
Yeah, I think it's 75, something like that.
Unreal.
Yeah. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about Rockstar Capital. How did you start it? And give us your origin story.
Yeah, I love that. I love telling my origin story. So I'm from McAllen, Texas, which is a little border town down the valley. And so, first person in my family to go to college. My dad worked at Whataburger for 40 years. He ran the Valley stores down there. My mother worked at Levi's and Hager's. And, they're my first mentors. And they said, get good grades and go to school. And so that's what I did. And then you meet your university professors and they're telling you what an employer is looking for. And, be sure to start saving right away on your 401k and maxing out. So I did that. And I worked in corporate America for the first 10 years. I graduated with an engineering degree and I went in corporate sales. And, after about 10 years, corporate America reared its head. And what I mean by that is like, you work really hard as a sales guy to grow your territory, to develop it, to plant seeds, to harvest for tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, your employer wants you to be capped on what you can make. I want to make here. They want me to make here. So they would divvy up my territory, or they would give it to somebody else who was just starting, who needed to be able to have some accounts to call on, some regular accounts. And, that after the second or third time of that happening, I recognized that, it was really an epiphany moment that I didn't have control of my financial future. My employer did, which meant that he was going to dictate the kind of life I'm going to have. He's going to dictate the kind of schools my kids are going to go to, and really when I was going to be able to retire. So because I became disenfranchised with that, I started looking around. And I started traveling as a sales guy. I'm in the
Yeah.
car all the time,
Yeah.
running to my different sales calls. And I listened to business radio a lot. Back in the early days, Susie Orman, Ray Lucia. I remember. Then I heard this crazy guy in Houston that owned a real estate club. And I guess after about a year, 2 years of listening to this, I decided I'm going to show up to the club. And I paid $500 to go to this 2-day boot camp on the weekend. And it was everything single family investing. And then I was like, wow, I came home, I told my wife, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna be the single family king. I'm gonna buy a bunch of rent houses, and this is gonna supplement the income that my employer is siphoning away from me. I went on Sunday and I learned multifamily investing, which
Completely different animal.
completely different animal. Not even the same world. And once I learned that, I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. This is what's going to change my life, and it did. I paid $10,000 to that real estate club because what you're doing is you're paying for mentorship. You're paying for
Yeah.
somebody else to teach you what they had to learn through trial and error. So you're paying for their roadmap, in this case, their financial roadmap. And I learned that. I networked, having been a sales guy, I knew how to speak. I knew how to convey my story. I knew how to listen and ask the right kind of questions so that I could get the most out of that conversation, but still, give 51% of the relationship to the other person so we can develop a bond. And I did that. And, I over the next 3 years, a partner and I joined together, and we went off to buy 2,000 apartment units together the next 3 years using the equity from the club, using the equity from other members. And so we quit our day jobs to run our real estate full time. After about 3 years.
How long?
Yeah, that was 3 years. That was let's say that was
Wow.
2007, January of '07 when I'm sorry, excuse me. Yeah, January of '07 when I joined. And by March of 2011, we had amassed 10 properties, roughly worth $100 million, with 2,000 units. Then we had a falling out. And a month later, I started Rockstar Capital. So I left all the bad habits and all the issues that we had in that company. And I brought the good with me. I brought the experience, right? Because it's all here. That's why you hear guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, whatever, they say they would like trade everything they have today to go back in time, but they get to keep what they learned. And so I kept what I learned when I transitioned to start Rockstar Capital. Rockstar was a little nickname that I gave to all the employees there. Whenever they did a great job, I would say, "You're such a rock star." So I started that company in 2011, bought our first deal, bought another deal a year later, bought another deal a year later, became a national apartment owner of the year winner. And then over time started growing with velocity. And because you're able to return a lot of equity back to people, so in other words, you developed the business plan, you bought it, you renovated it, you improved operations, you returned all their capital back, and they still own the deal. Once word spreads, people want to start giving you money. And that happens. So
I want some of that. Heck yeah.
yeah. So fast forward to today in 2022, I've raised about $150 million of private capital. I've been able to purchase about 26, 27 apartment deals. We've sold 5. We have another 5 that we're going to sell. And our portfolio value today is $600 million. I've won a second national owner of the year title, and I'm the reigning Texas independent owner of the year. So I love what I do because I've been able to change people's lives, not just for them, for generations. Because what we do, we create massive amount of valuation by running these apartment deals. So in reality, I paid $10,000 back in '07 that brought me into basically a net worth around 50, 60 million today, and a portfolio that's valued north of $600 million.
Wow.
Wow, that story and just really kind of saying, "Hey, I see there's nothing wrong with working for another company,
No.
but you just have to realize the cost of that." I mean, there's not. But being an entrepreneur, It takes a very special type of person. It takes someone who's got a lot of courage and a lot of ability to deal with stress and uncertainty. And if you're willing to take that and invest in yourself and to find something, that sounds like you're really passionate about real estate. I mean, before you went to that seminar, did you know about real estate investing? Did you
I mean,
know?
remember my dad worked at Whataburger. You know, I mean that's where we were from. I mean, you know, middle class. You know, background. Nobody owned real estate other than the house my parents bought in 1980, which they still own today. And you know, so it really just took an epiphany moment. It took a singular moment where I got pissed off enough that my employer was monkeying with my commission plan. It de-incentivized me to want to continue to stay there. I recognized that corporate America is about corporate America. My wife and I at the time were planning that we would retire by 50, and I'm 47 today. We would retire by 50, and we'd have $1 million each in our 401k. You know, I've never heard of people actually being able to do that. It's a dream they promise you. You max out your 401k, but you know what? It doesn't change your situation today.
Right.
What can you do today to add cash flow today? What can you do today to create generational wealth for yourself? What I mean by generational wealth, money that I cannot spend that I will pass on to my children.
Yeah.
You know, so when I hear stories from my investors where they tell me, you helped retire me from corporate America, you helped put my kid to an Ivy League school that she qualified to get into, but I didn't think that I could afford. But it was my investments with you over the last 10 years that paid for them. When you hear other stories of how it helped somebody with a medical issue that they didn't know that, it's like being married to a third person who's contributing to the pie, you know? And it took courage on my part to get going way back when, but it took courage on their part because we're so conditioned that stocks and bonds are the only
Are
investments.
the only way to go.
Yeah.
That's right.
And maxing out your 401k. You know, you can use your IRA from that 401k from a job you left or a self-directed IRA and buy apartment buildings. Like apartment buildings were once reserved for the blue hairs that live in New York, that work at Blackstone, that work for these giant REITs. But it is now accessible to mainstream America. And it took that real estate club to introduce the concept to me. And in that club, you know, they're just there about replacing your income, which is great. Hey, if you can replace your income and not have to get to go work in the mornings and not have to go to a corporate America job, that's great.
And you're in control of your destiny.
Ambitions and control your destiny. I had bigger ambition. I had a bigger pot. My kids were still very young at the time. You know, when I retired from corporate America in 2008, after only a year doing apartments, realizing, wow, I don't have to rely on that income anymore. I can do this. I can have my own schedule. I mean, I wasn't going to stay in bed. I wanted to go work because if you know that everything you do can make you more money, why would you not do it? In corporate America, it's only going to move that needle just a little bit. But in apartment investing, did you know a $10 rent bump on a 200 unit property is worth $400,000 in new valuation?
Wow.
By just moving the needle by $10. If you raise that single family rent house by $10, what do you get?
Yeah.
Another $10.
Yeah.
Because
$120 a year. Congratulations.
That's it. That's it. But in the apartment world, there's a valuation formula that they taught me in this real estate club that I never learned at A&M. I never learned from my parents or from the university professors. You know, I learned great lessons from them, but I didn't learn that lesson that would teach me financial independence. It was by the grace of God that I got angry enough that I decided to change my life by spending that $10,000 in that real estate club. I mean, it was the most magical. I can't even understand what the exponential return would be today, not just on what it's done for me, but what it's been able to do for all the investors that we have.
So when the pain of the current situation is more than the pain of the uncertainty or the unknown, that's when your life changed. That is so amazing. And we've heard that over and over from entrepreneurs. But let's just pause just a second. Let's hear a message from this episode's sponsor. Okay, we're back. So Robert, both Chris and I have got a bunch of questions. I'm going to kick it off and just kind of go through and be like, I understand. So as a banker, I understand one specific way of looking at the deals that you look at. And I also know that looking at different groups that have come, investment groups, sponsors like you, everybody kind of brings their own little flavor to the table. Everybody brings their own skill set, whether that be someone that loves to nerd out on the numbers and be able to kind of understand, okay, where is there depressed value, or can we do some renovations and increase the value? Maybe someone that actually goes out and just loves hunting deals and finding strong cash flows, or looking at emerging markets of where the city is growing and finding the locations. Other people just like to stroke a check and be like, hey, I want to use my equity into it, but I don't want to get a call. I don't want anything except a check every single month in my mailbox. Where you obviously have a company that has to do all of those functions, but where do you specifically love? What's the part of the deal that you love?
Yeah, I mean, I do. But when I started this business, it was by myself. So I did all the underwriting, I did all the property management, I did the scheduling of the renovations, I did the scheduling of the make readies, the move-ins to get them rent ready. And so, having learned that process, I was able to become like a five-tool player. I never came in only doing this, or I never came in only doing that. And because I had a sales background, and I have I understand finances to an extent. I'm an engineer, so I get formulas. But also being an engineer, I understand that this has to equal that. But being the sales guy, you get creative.
That's right.
Right. And because I didn't have I didn't have the 4.0, right? I had a little lower than that. And so a little bit more of a personality. And so I'm able to take what I learned and then just get creative with it. So I like all aspects. I love here in my office. When I walk around to all the departments, I ran every single, from the social media, our first Facebook ad, I ran, to the operations, the training. I enjoy all of it. I think today I spent the most of my time in the strategy, in where are we going. When you get started in what I do, most guys buy the cheapest that's out there, which because it's what you can afford. So we bought a lot of workforce housing back in the day, 1970s, 1980s stuff, and then you renovate it. You increase valuation because of the rent, because you can get higher rent bumps. Today, I'm at a different scale. Today, I'm at a different point in my life now where it's exciting to be able to now have the balance sheet to be able to afford those $80 million deals. My first deals were only like $3 million. Then I moved to
which is not a bad deal.
No, it's not a bad deal because that's where you are in that cycle of your life. You start there. You have to build a track record to get to your balance sheet. Your personal financial statements are wide enough, long enough that you can now afford to do a $50 million loan that's going to get you a $70 or $80 million asset. Mm-hmm. It's those assets that BlackRock buy. It's those assets that those REITs buy. Why? Because they're safer. They're consistent. During COVID, I'm knocking on doors to go collect rent with my teams, and they had the money because you're seeing brand new Samsung boxes out there by the dumpster. You're seeing brand new cars. They just didn't want to pay their rent because of the eviction moratorium. But when you lean that TV, when you take that, go into their apartment when they're not home and they owe rent, and you take that TV, you take that PS5, you take that coffee pot, they come in and pay. Right. Yep. And that sounds aggressive, but thank God I was born in Texas. We have great landlord laws because I have a fiduciary responsibility to my investors to make sure that they get their investment and to make sure that my renters are paying for the value that I give them.
And that's exactly right. You're not going and being the bad guy. It's like, look, we entered into an agreement, and I understand. Yes. I mean, I can just I hear your heart. Yeah. The fact of what you got. If someone comes to you is like, Robert, here's where it is. Let me lay it out. Let me show you my income statement. Dude, I cannot do this. I mean, you're going to find a way to work through them. But at the same time, it's a matter of saying, look, you have a responsibility to pay me, just like I have a responsibility to pay the bank, to pay my investors.
That wasn't the situation during COVID.
That was
not the situation. Yep. There's brand new Samsung boxes by the dumpster. There's brand new keys on the coffee table. They had the money. Yeah. So again, because my career started in 2007, I survived the Great Recession. That was real. There was no money. There was no government intervention. That was legit. It was 30 move-ins in, 30 move-outs out. It was just this cycle for a series and series of months and months. The COVID was manufactured. That was not the same. But here's what the lesson I learned. In my Class A's, which I was now beginning to expand into Class A, I had zero delinquency. I had less than 1% because those people actually cared about their credit. They recognized that they owe the rent at some point, and they recognize that if they don't pay their rent today, that's okay, but where they live next time is not going to be as nice as this.
That's right.
And because they're going to have an eviction on their record. So I enjoyed today the strategy of of evolving. I feel today, that my own team's having a hard time keep up with me because I just hit this level of self-awareness. My superpower is that I'm able to continue to invest in myself because I learned all of this through mentorship. So I pay mentorship today. There's a guy named Grant Cardone who I follow religiously. He and I, over the last 4 years, have developed a friendship now. And, I watch him and I pay attention. I'm constantly evolving. So I've got to get my team to evolve with me. And so I enjoy the strategic aspect on where we're going to go. CEO, right? Concentrate on the goals, execute the strategy, and optimize the systems. That's what I enjoy doing today. I don't want to necessarily knock on doors today, but I have to tell them, hey, you have permission to go knock on doors. Here's the contract we have. Go get our money that belongs to us.
So, Robert, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? Because you sound like you've got some really big goals here. Yeah. What is your BHAG?
Yeah, for sure. Everything to me is a 10X, right? You got to go and concentrate 10 times. The goal, whatever you have, multiply it times 10. They said, shoot for the stars and finish at the moon. But if you shoot for the moon, you may not make it to the moon. So right now we're at $600 million in asset value. We'll be at $700 million before long. My goal is to get to $1 billion of asset value by next year, by the end of 2023. And then over the next 5 to 10 years, I want to get to 4 billion and then 6 billion of real estate. Because I want to see if a kid from McAllen, Texas, whose parents were middle income, middle class, can do it. I want to see how many people.
I don't think that there's a question of can you do it. It's going to be a matter of when.
Well, and I have a duty to be successful to my family and to them, to represent them. Because there's not a lot of guys from my hometown that make it to A&M. I didn't, at the time I applied, I didn't realize how difficult it was to get in. And I'm very fortunate. I actually transferred it. I didn't get in the first time. So I know it's difficult. So I just want to be able to just hit my potential today. So I shoot for these big numbers and then I reverse engineer back how I'm going to do it. I don't have the money today to be able to buy $4 billion of assets or $6 billion of assets. I'm going to have to grow that. But you got to reverse engineer backwards. So that's what I shoot for the stars. And I'm like, okay, how do I get to the year before? How do I get to the year before? And then just work your way backwards.
The tenacity of way back in the day of saying, okay, how do I get into A&M? That's my goal. It instilled with you the desire and the push and the grit to be able to do that. And then couple that with the education that you've got. I mean, this is such an amazing story. Well, before we roll into the lightning round, Robert, let's pause one more time for another break from this episode's sponsor. Okay, so we are back into the lightning round. Super quick rules, super easy rules, 30 seconds less, and we're just going to rock right through this. Robert, what is your favorite hack? This could be a personal hack, a business hack. What do you got for us?
Yeah, mindset is everything to me. You've got to wake up in the morning with the right mindset. I know life hits you. You can't always do it. I listen to spiritual music first thing in the morning. I listen to 2 or 3 songs, put me in the right mood in my head, the right mood in my heart. And then I find the right business podcast. And I listen to that. And that gets me focused in the morning. And I start making calls right away. As soon as I get out of the shower, I'm on the phone with somebody. I got to get in business mode. And that helps me achieve what I need to achieve during the day. Mm-hmm. Being on this podcast, believe it or not, wakes me up. I love being on this right now. Like it makes me want to go and hit it a little bit more.
Awesome. What's the favorite advice that you've ever been given and bonus points if you tell us how you applied it?
Yeah, so it goes back to what you guys were saying earlier, making that audacious decision to change your life. So my very first mentor, my first adult mentor was the guy at the real estate club. And he said, what gets in the way of a great life? And it's a good life. It's that life sitting at the end of the cul-de-sac in your house, barbecuing with your buddies and accepting that and not wanting more. Well, I didn't want to live in Katy, Texas anymore. I wanted to live in River Oaks. I wanted to live in the nicer part. So what are you willing to do? So if you're willing to jump ship and quit that corporate job and listen to the zany guy at this real estate club who's showing you how to buy real estate, wow, I have a great life today.
That's right. I'll goes back to that. So, Robert, you already told us what your superpower is, so we're going to jump over that one. All right, you said you're a business podcast junkie, and that is part of the reason why Chris and I started this. Top 3 business podcast. Quick.
Yeah, Grant Cardone, Ed Milet, and I like Brad Lee. Those 3 guys are strong.
Nice. Love it. So I think this is going to be a no-brainer. What gets you out of bed and excited about your business?
The next deal.
Yeah, it is next, but it's more of the what if. What if I don't get out of bed? How am I cheating myself? How am I not fulfilling to my potential? All my family, everybody came before me to put me in the spot that I'm in right now. And I want to make sure that I do the very best for them. My mom, her very first deal, she took 5 years before she invested with me. We're about to refinance that today. She put $400,000 into an investment that's now worth $1.6 million. And she's about to get a monster check in 45 days. That motivates the crap out of me. And being able to do that for her and to other people and to see, Mom, I can do it. I really can do it. And I just did it for us. That just motivates me.
Yeah. I'm so stoked that I mean, to be able to do that for an investor is one thing. To be able to do it to the woman that gave you everything is something. Oh my God, I think I got goosebumps on it. That's awesome. Robert, how can the Aggie Growth Hacks family get in touch with you to support you moving forward?
Absolutely. So listen, what we do is we buy rental apartment complexes and we need equity. We need to partner together and we will partner together and we'll buy these amazing institutional class assets, right? So if that sounds interesting to you, where you're looking at a 3x return in a 10-year horizon, you got depreciation to offset those gains, hit us up at investing@rockstar-capital.com. If you want to listen to me talk and free advice and videos, follow me on Instagram at Apartment Rockstar.
All right, actually, you heard it here. Follow him. Is Instagram, is that your social media channel of choice?
Yes, I love Instagram. I think it's great. We put all our videos, our reels. So it's at Apartment Rockstar. Send me a DM. Let me know you heard me on the podcast. Maybe I can get you on the phone and see if we can help each other out.
But to be able to have that open opportunity, Ags, to be able to learn from Robert. I mean, when Chris and I are going through this, I know we're both thinking that Robert, he realizes where he came from, and he realizes that it was education, it was other people that allowed him to learn. And I see that spirit of wanting to help other Ags out and help them to achieve their goal and help them to convert their good life into a great life. So, Robert, thank you so much for joining us. This has just been so eye-opening and so amazing. Appreciate you so much.
Thanks, James. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
So how about that, Ags? Was that pretty awesome? What Robert was a mindful of knowledge. I mean, wow, that was pretty awesome. Yeah. I had a ton of things that I wrote down here. What was your biggest takeaway, Greg?
Well, there was 2 that really struck me. One, he talked about wanting to make sure that he provides at least 51% of value for every relationship. So it's that go-giving attitude of just saying, look, I want to find partners and I want to have all these different types of relationships, but I want to make sure that I'm always giving more than I'm getting. And I think that especially in his world, he's talking a lot about equity investing in this asset and that asset, this class and that class, but really to always boil it down to say, look, I'm going to bring more value to you because that's the type of person that I am. That was so impactful. And then real quickly, the second thing that struck me was just his mindset, his ability to say, look, I am my own best resource. I am the unlimited potential. And so to have the mindset of saying, I'm going to continue to go to the moon. And if I miss that, or shoot for the stars and then land on the moon. Yeah. But his mindset of just constantly pushing himself and pushing his team and cheering them along and working with rock stars. So motivating and so cool.
I know.
What about yourself?
Well, beyond, just some of the stuff that we could absolutely learn from him, right? I think, honestly, the coolest part was when he said that he was going to be able to get his mom,
Oh my gosh, that was awesome.
That was so cool. For her to invest, what was it, 400,000 to get back $1.5 million is just, wow, what a return on investment. But on the business side of things, I think that it kind of goes along with your mindset thing of his drive. Holy schmoly, man. Yeah. His drive is like, he wasn't and he said it several times. He was not willing to settle for good, right? He could have, we could all have that good life, and he just wasn't wanting that good life of on the cul-de-sac, barbecues with his buddies. He wanted to be in River Oaks. He wanted to be a billionaire, right? And he's not stopping at this point, right? He's saying that he wants to go to $1 billion in valuations, and then 7 billion eventually. I mean, that's huge, and that takes a lot of drive for one person to be able to push an entire company forward like that. And I think that is so cool for a kid from McAllen, Texas, right, that went to Texas A&M University to be worth $7 billion eventually it's just mind-boggling. That's awesome.
That is so cool and so motivating. And I love how he said that he gets up and he pushes himself so hard because he's letting himself down. It's not that I've got to go out and I need to get the cars, I need to get this, I need the ego and all that. It's because I want to continue to push myself hard. And it's a disservice. I mean, I'll bet you he hasn't taken a vacation in 10 years because he doesn't see what he does every day as work.
Right.
So motivating. That's super cool.
So cool. Yeah.
Well, Alex, that's going to do it for this episode of Aggie Growth Hacks. We hope that you reach out and that you connect with Robert, Instagram being his social media platform of choice. But I also know he's fairly active on LinkedIn as well. So when you're out on socials, make sure that you connect with Chris and I. If we're not connected already, make sure that you check out the Aggie Growth Hacks Facebook group. And we continue this conversation there. And Ags, we just hope that you also check out AggieGrowthHacks.com, where you'll not only be able to hear this episode, but also our previous episodes and some of our other great content.
We also want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M University. Since 1999, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship has served as the hub of entrepreneurship for Texas A&M. If you're an Aggie entrepreneur or a wantrepreneur, head on over to their website to find a program that's right for you. Just go to AggieGrowthHacks.com/McFerrin. Well, join us next time when we connect with another great Aggie entrepreneur and learn how they hack their growth. Until then, I'm Chris Hunter.
And I'm Greg Martin. Thanks and gig 'em.